This week on the Animation Station podcast, I sit down with webcomic creator Stephen McCranie. This week's episode is also brought to you by Studio Headphones, the maker of high-quality headphones. All you have to do is go to studio.com, use the code ASP15 at checkout to get 15% off your first order and free worldwide shipping. So strap yourselves in, Space Cadets. The ASP starts now. Alright, hello and welcome to the Animation Station podcast, brought to you by Studio Headphones. I'm your host, Josh, and joining me to kick off Webcomic Week is webcomic creator Stephen McCranie. How you doing, Stephen?
Hey, Josh. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, no problem, man. Thanks for coming on. Now, I will say, while you're doing this, you're working on Space Boy right now.
Yeah, I made sure to have all my pencils done, so I'm just kind of doing mindless inking and stuff like that, just putting the inks on.
Awesome. Now, so let's go ahead and we'll jump off with Space Boy. So you created Space Boy and premiered it on WEBTOONs back in March of 2015, correct?
Yeah. It was kind of it was when WEBTOONs was first getting started, so they made a contest to try to bring in more talent and get people interested in the platform. And at the time, I had been kind of wandering around looking for work. And I saw that they were offering like $30,000 for first prize.
Jeez.
I was like, what? This is weird. Like, this doesn't happen in webcomics. Webcomics isn't worth this much. And they had like a second and third prize for like $5,000 each. So I was like, okay. And so I think most people, especially professional cartoonists at the time, they just had like, no one was taking it seriously. And it looked like a scam. And at the very best, it looked like a big company trying to get a bunch of IP and just kind of IP farming.
Yeah.
And essentially like trying to get people to submit stuff so they could steal all their rights or something. But I did my research, and man, there's been a webcomics kind of revolution in Korea, and it turned out they checked out. So I made a challenge for myself that I was going to draw 100 pages in 2 months for this contest, and I stopped doing everything I was doing. And at the time, like I said, no one really knew about the platform, so I felt like I had kind of an advantage a little bit. In the fact that there wasn't a lot of professional cartoonists who were, taking it seriously. And so I didn't have to compete with a lot of super good talent. Not to say that there wasn't a lot of good talent in the contest, but at the time it was a pretty small pool. But I worked my butt off, and I even produced like a little YouTube series about the experience, and ended up winning the contest. So Space Boy started as the first WEBTOONs Discover Talent Search winner, and was featured as they brought me on to their staff as a featured cartoonist.
That's awesome.
Since then.
So what made you want to do Space Boy? Sorry, so what made you want to do Space Boy? Like what brought that concept up?
It's been kind of rolling around in my head for a long time. And it's an amalgamation of like a lot of teeny ideas. So I really couldn't say. A lot of it's like unconscious little bits and story bits. I will say there was a Japanese film that I watched about hikikomori, which is like a shut-in kind of this phenomenon in Japanese society. Where it's essentially what it's like to just isolate yourself from society, and that kind of connected with some other ideas. But yeah, it's hard to describe. I don't know. I couldn't exactly explain it, which I think is actually strangely important as an artist. I've started to realize that like if you can explain what you're doing, it probably means you're not making very good art. That the best art is the stuff where like you actually go out there and you try to figure something out that you don't understand, and you bring people along with you to kind of contemplate something that's mysterious and beyond yourself. So I proudly say that I don't quite know where it came from and where it's going exactly. Uh, but yeah.
So were you a big fan of like sci-fi and everything growing up? Is that what you want to do, something in space?
I um yeah, I was. I am a big fan of sci-fi, but I never thought of like I'll do this. Yeah, I never decided to make Spaceboy because of the genre of my
Okay.
love for the genre. It's just a really efficient way to talk about a lot of important concepts to our current society and stuff. So
So you talk about bringing up a lot of important concepts. Like, what are some of the main concepts that you want to uh, explore and present to your readers?
I think I'm asking questions like why do friendships end? Why do people grow apart? And but even broadly, I think our I think we as especially as Americans living in kind of a materialistic society deal with a lot of kind of just existential depression, sort of, where there's just a sense that like if our lives just come down to the stuff that we have, or the things that we own, if the world is just what you can see and touch, then why are we here? What is there any meaning beyond that? Like, is this it? Or is there just a big like vast nothingness out there, or is there something more like in the beyond? Which I guess essentially kind of comes down to the question of like, does God exist? Is there meaning in the world? Is there kind of an ultimate reality that we should strive for? And so it kind of deals with existentialism to a certain extent, but I try to make it's in a way that's accessible. I think it's not a philosophical. It gets philosophical, but it's a natural extension of the characters in the story. I don't put the philosophy before the story. It's more about the honest reactions of the characters as these struggles I think a lot of us have as we're trying to piece our lives together.
Because like I know you did a lot of like you do a lot of stuff with augmented reality in the series,
Yeah.
and I like the way that you do that, and I like the way that Amy, when she first comes, like when she first gets basically to the future, and she starts seeing all of this, and like I can't even talk. Sorry, I'm in case everybody doesn't know, I've been sick for the last week, so I took some medication before we did this, so my mind's all over the place. Um, but when she gets transported, minor spoilers for Space Boy. When she gets awoken in the future, she has to figure out all of these, augmented reality and everything, and not understanding what she's missing, but then also knowing that everything that she's seeing with the augmented reality is not real.
Yeah.
So like all these people are pretending to be something that they're obviously not, and they're all perfectly okay with it. And she wants to still have that real world, and it's like, why are you missing out what's happening in the real world when you're shut up in the augmented reality? I thought that was a really cool take on that.
Yeah, and for that, I think the reason that resonates so much is not just because augmented reality is a technology that we're like currently developing and could become a possibility if they're able to make it, but also I think just as we are, it was just kind of like I was kind of expressing that like the fact that like social media has essentially it's made itself a real necessity to function in our in our everyday world. And yet it is
Mm-hmm.
kind of empty in a lot of ways. It makes things very shallow, and I think we take for granted the fact that we kind of create these digital personas um, that people interact with. I think that should be kind of a shocking and strange thing that you set up a profile on a social media platform and put your picture on it, and then people come and talk to it while you're gone. It's
Yeah.
weird. It's kind of weird, and when you say something and people don't, maybe one person likes it, but no one else does. It You feel like, oh, that thing I said doesn't really matter, but maybe that one person who liked it a lot, you know, maybe it changed their lives. Like there's no way, but the little like buttons really don't tell you much about how what you said went out and impacted the world. It's so different than talking to someone face to face, and there is a certain falseness to the digital worlds that we create, which again I was kind of trying to talk about using just augmented reality as a metaphor for it.
Because I mean, yeah, I mean, just going off with some of the stuff they have now, especially in the VR. I mean, there's full VR chat rooms where you can just like put a little anime character as your avatar and walk around with them and interact with other people. And so, I mean, it could be your voice, sure, but I mean, that is not the real you, and it's basically like kind of what's going on in like in the high school in Space Boy.
Yeah.
Just all kinds of different ways that we all have to be connected to the web.
Yeah, and I'm getting ready. I have a new so Space Boy is gonna it's coming out as a book from Dark Horse in July, and really excited about it. The first volume's going to be out, and I'm starting to have to ramp up my social media stuff, which is kind of unfortunate a little bit. There were months and months where I barely was on social media at all because it's really distracting and hard to do like good work. I think when you're kind of in two worlds at once, so to speak, it divides your focus up to a certain extent. But now I'm having to ramp up and get back on it again, and so I'm kind of like, oh, this is kind of unfortunate. But there's a necessity there, like I said, like we almost don't give people an option, and then we get. Like I've noticed that if I'm not on social media, people actually kind of will get mad at me in a certain, like it makes it a little inconvenient that they actually have to talk to me, or things like that. And like with my friends, like if I don't jump on the platform they're on, then there's a social consequence for that. And I mean, I sound like a Luddite or like a kind of a technology curmudgeon, but I think what we do, we kind of like, we don't measure, we only look at what technology gives us, but we don't measure what it takes away from us. Because it's just so hard to see negatives, it's so hard to see the absence of something. But I think it's really important. And it's important to say, like, what is this? Like, this is giving me something clearly, but what is it taking away? And is that something I'm willing to part with? But since it's all free, we're like, oh, just sign up. It's free. There's no cost. But there's a cost, or else it wouldn't exist. Like they're doing it for a reason. And it's to get your attention. It's to get your focus, and it's to take there's a literal monetary industry based on that. And it can kind of suck you dry a little bit, especially creatively. So, yeah. And I tried to put that in the comic. I sound really negative toward it, but I tried to put in the comic that it was like, it's not bad. It's not inherently evil. It's just a technology, and we need to use it rather than it using us. And there are some positives to it. There are some really good things about it. We should really be careful, and we should think about it. And so, that's what I try to kind of put in the comic to a certain extent.
Now, did you always want to be an artist? Like when you were growing up, did little Stevie, did he want to always be, someone who drew and, did things like comics and illustrations and everything like that?
Yeah, I've been drawing comics since before I knew how to write. I would draw a comic, and my mom would have my mom fill in the speech bubbles for me. And so I couldn't even technically read the comic I had drawn because I didn't know how to read. But I had drawn a comic. So it kind of was my language from really young age.
Nice. So any big like comic references and everything growing up? Like were you a big fan of like one of the Marvels or the DCs or like Archie or Calvin and Hobbes, anything like that?
Yeah. So yes to all those things. Anything that was in a comics format, I read and kind of consumed.
Awesome. So what type of manga like really hit you?
The biggest one was Nausicaa, which I found in high school. And have you read that one?
I don't think so. Like for whatever reason, like when you said Nausicaa, I went to like the Ghibli film. And
yeah, no, that's right.
Okay.
Way back in the day, Miyazaki wanted to create Nausicaa. It would be his first independently created film. I think before that he directed Lupin the Third, but
Yeah,
this would be
I think
his
that
own.
was his first one, was Lupin.
Yeah. So he wanted to write his film, but they were like, well, at the time, and still today, a lot of the anime industry is tied to whether it does well as a manga. So they're like, well, you need to prove that this will do well so make a manga. So he went and he started producing Nausicaa, this amazing comic and he interestingly, he had like a lot of European influence in it. So it sort of reads a little bit differently than a manga, but he started producing it for a magazine called Animage, and uh, worked on it for a couple months or so, or maybe even a year or so. And they're like, okay, well, this is really good, so let's make this into a movie. So then he goes and he makes the movie, but then but the manga still wasn't finished, and he went back and produced, he worked on it for a good like 10 more years, off and on between films. And man, if you haven't read it, it takes the story of Nausicaa, and it's like a 2,000 page opus. It's just beautiful. And what's amazing about him is that it reads like an anime. Like, he has all of his animation skills. And so as a comic, it's just brilliant because there's such a sense of movement and cinematography to it. And it's incredible. So that really blew me away. I definitely recommend it.
Awesome. I'll have to check that out because I've seen the movie and I really like the film. But yeah, I didn't even know that there was a manga based off. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, yeah. So, and it's by the man himself, and all of his brilliance is totally in there. And I think in the film, they don't even leave the Valley of the Wind, but
I don't
in the
think
manga,
so.
they go all around the world, the entire world, like,
Oh,
and there's giant cataclysmic events and grappling with all these kinds of ancient gods and things like that. And it's a really incredible kind of graphic contemplation of life, just as Miyazaki always does. But yeah, so that was probably one of my biggest influences when I first got into manga.
awesome. Now, did you pull any of your storytelling elements or character design from any certain manga, or like do you know of one that just really strikes at you? Like I know Nausicaa, but something else that's like, you know what, I really love the way that these characters are designed, or I really love the way this person tells a story.
Another good one. Have you read Bone by Jeff
Yeah,
Smith?
I've seen Bone. We when I worked at Walden Books slash Borders, it would always be in the comic section. But and like so, I've seen them like when I would have to stock and I would flip through some pages, but I've never actually sat down and read any of it, like cover to
Yeah,
cover.
that's probably. And I'm giving you some heavy reading here. These are both literally like 2,000 page works, but
Yeah.
but that's another one where again, Jeff Smith, he has animator training, and he comes in and creates this real masterwork. And what's amazing about his work is that like you really feel the weight of the characters, and it's again very character driven. He doesn't have an agenda as he creates the work. He's just trying to be true to the characters and bring them along their journey. And that one's a really appealing. It has a lot more kind of a pull for the audience, I think, because it kind of asks the question like, what if Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and Goofy went to the land of Mordor and tried to go on this epic Tolkien-like adventure? So it has all the appeal of a Disney film with all of the epicness of a high fantasy, and that's what's incredible about that piece of work.
Now, I mean, I will say, like, I came into into the manga scene a little bit later. Like, when I first, like, the first thing I remember about anything, any Japanese-esque type thing, was when Toonami first started. Like, when I was getting, so I was getting all the anime and everything, but like, I didn't get into manga until, really honestly, when the internet got a little bit better.
Yeah,
So, I mean, not until like I was like, 16, 17, 18. That's when, I'd be like, oh, there's actually a place where you can, find things and Like, oh, there's such a thing called the manga? I didn't even know what that was.
Yeah.
So then, going into, like, Borders and, like, buying, like, Shonen Jump and, like, actually seeing that there was a manga section, you're like, oh, cool, I could actually read the things that I'm watching on TV. Were you a big fan of, like, that anime, like, kind of like Japan Invasion?
Yeah, it really was incredible to witness just because I mean, since like I told you, I had read as much comics as I could everywhere all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really, even though I was really young, I was really also really aware of where the comics industry was. And I remember a time when, and this makes me sound old, but I'm not that old, really, honestly, sort of. I remember a time when the graphic novel section in the bookstore was 2 shelves. And when manga came along, essentially what happened, if you can imagine, like imagine comics like starting to gain steam in Japan in the 50s and 60s and becoming this huge industry and a huge art form with hundreds of thousands of cartoonists and genres and all that kind of stuff. And then, developing for 50 years, and then it's starting to become popular in America. So they essentially import the most popular and the cream of the crop from this huge pool of the last 50 years of the best comics, and it was really huge, and so it felt really hard to compete with, intimidating even, because as far as shelving space goes and like Borders and stuff, it was growing at rates of like 100, 200, 300% per year for a while there, which is so nuts. That just doesn't happen. It was like a shift and like an upset. And so it was really something to pay attention to because, like there was a definite paradigm shift that was going on. And kind of unfair, honestly, to us American cartoonists, but what you gonna do? You gotta adapt.
All right, now real quick, need to read something. Just to let everybody know, this episode of the ASP is brought to you by Studio Headphones. Studio wants to revolutionize the way people see headphones. Most headphones on the market can offer you one of 2 things: style or tech. Studio wants to bridge that gap. While emphasizing modern Scandinavian design, they provide a product that makes that matches the quality of the highest rated headphones on the market for a fraction of the cost. Personally, I'm using their newest model, the Tray. They're perfect for when I'm at the gym or when I'm working at my desk. With 9 hours of battery life, I really don't have to worry about them dying anytime. And because of the design, they never fall out of my ears like my old headphones do. Studio is giving all ASPers 15% off and free worldwide shipping on your next purchase by using the code ASP15 at checkout. Again, go to studio.com and enter the code ASP15 at checkout to get yourself an awesome pair of snazzy headphones. Okay, so let's go a little bit more into Space Boy, because honestly right now, again, spoilers for Space Boy, you're really starting to kill me with this whole Argo arc with young Oliver.
Yeah.
Because you kind of told us what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Or you've alluded to things that are going to happen, and I'm like, man, come on, you're making me fall in love with some characters.
I know.
And it's hard.
It's a little bit, I think I can hear that. I'll get on Twitter and talk with some of the fans, and they're like, so how long is this going to last? And yeah, it is a hard thing to watch. It's I don't know what level of spoilers are you gonna post for this episode?
Hey man, I'm not going to. I'll post whatever you say. So if you don't want to talk about it, don't spoil anything that you don't want to talk about.
All right. Well, I guess in a broad scope, this current.
Honestly, no real spoilers because I don't want to be spoiled myself.
Can you repeat that?
Honestly, not a bunch of spoilers because I don't want to be spoiled myself.
I get you. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, then what's the question? I feel you.
The question is.
Sorry.
The question is Josh.
Sorry, not.
Yeah, the
sorry.
question is Josh. Josh just wanted to rant a bit.
I get you. Yeah. No, I think a lot of people are feeling that right now, and Yeah, it's one of the biggest tools in my toolbox is to keep them wanting more, and it's kind of what I get paid for. So I really squeeze it out, but I hope that I pay it off. I think sometimes a comic can end up undermining itself by just keep continually promising stuff. But I'm working towards. I'll put it this way: I'm working towards the culmination of these arcs as quickly as I can. Every week, I'm like, okay, how much closer are we? Okay, but boy, comics is a very slow medium because I have to draw every single moment. So
Now, for like, so when you created like, we'll just to our main two for Amy and Oliver, what did you? Were there any special designs, or were there any people in your life personally that you were basing these two characters off of?
yeah, I think uh, Amy was is very close to my sister. She's very sensitive and thoughtful, and yeah, caring for people. Oliver's kind of funny because he didn't really. It takes about 100 or 200 pages to actually even meet him or get to know him as a character in the
Yeah.
story. And I was scared of him for a little while because he was the X factor that I didn't quite understand, and I was nervous that again, this whole making promises you can't keep. I was nervous that he was going to like unveil his character and kind of destroy what I was working on. I don't know if that makes sense, but ironically, I think Oliver turned out to be more like me than anybody else in the story. So I was scared of myself, essentially.
Oh, well, don't be scared of yourself. But I mean, I do kind of get that. Like, especially when you're writing something. Like, I know whenever I do one of these, I always have to be like, okay, Josh, don't sound stupid. Don't mess up. Don't stop sniffling in your while you're trying to do this interview. Be sure and actually learn how to read. Go get some Hooked on Phonics after this episode so you can actually know how to pronounce words.
Yeah, I get you.
So yeah, I get
There's
that.
a certain like, especially because I'm creating this at a really fast pace. Um, a lot of it's improv, which is I think improv is like one of the most terrifying ways to create something, but it's also one of the best ways to create something meaningful. It's like with podcasting, like for you in your case, like your audience doesn't really want pre-scripted perfect stuff. They kind of want the magic that happens in the moment that is unscripted and real. And I think in Space Boy, like I'm constantly trying to reach for that, and it's a really uncomfortable way to write because I have to cede a lot of territory to my characters themselves and let them take the wheel and kind of bounce off of each other. But I think it's more honest in the end, and I think that that's why a work can resonate, and why a podcast can resonate too.
Now, kind of going off of character design, I kind of started rereading.
Yeah.
Because I was like, you know what? For this, I want to go ahead and start rereading so I can get a sense of like the earlier stuff again. So I went back to the earlier stuff, and I love the way that you have progressed with your art style.
Oh, thank you.
It's like because I read the else, like I really like that, and then like you see the progression of how Amy and Oliver and like on the whole entire comic, and your skills as an artist have just evolved over these last 2 years, and it almost three. Oh yeah, almost three now. So like over these 3 years, to where you're like, oh my gosh, this like I'm basically watching you evolve as an artist, and it's super cool.
Yeah, every single episode, I'm trying to become a better artist, and there's two reasons for that. One is that I really do want to master my craft and become, to get really like world class level skills someday. But another part is that I want to survive as an artist too. And the WEBTOON's experiment. I gotta be careful about how I talk about this because they're my employer. But the WEBTOON's experiment is really awesome, and I believe that it is the future of or at least a possible future about how web comics might be distributed on the web. So I believe in it, but I'm also like I've also learned my lesson the hard way about kind of how turbulent the comics industry can be, and I'm always like, well, what if webtoons ended tomorrow? Would I have the skills to find new work and to compete with other artists? Because um, when I first, just like I explained earlier, like getting into webtoons when I did, it was kind of me being an opportunist. And there's plenty of artists out there who are a lot better than me as far as draftsmanship goes. But so I've been really trying to improve my draftsmanship and the appeal of my characters and their consistency and proportion and their anatomy and stuff. And I'm trying to improve, and it's an ideal way to improve it. Webtoons is super generous, and so I get to draw comics all the time, and so I'm like, okay, I'm not going to waste a second of this. I'm going to just keep trying to grow as much as I can.
Now, I will say, like I said, going back to reading the old stuff, I do miss all of the like the way that you used to draw like the feet and everything. Like I miss that. I miss that sometimes. I'm like, oh, I like because I had forgotten about that a lot. I was like, oh, that's right. They used to be so very stylized,
very iconic.
They were really cool with it.
Yeah, I think my style is. Maybe this is a little too technical, but like early on, I rely a lot more on icon and shape, and they've almost been that iconography has almost been like a placeholder until I can fill it in with like anatomy and perspective and foreshortening and all that stuff. But the story's there, regardless of the art style. So that's always been something that's been important to me: is story first, then your art, then your everything else.
And I love that Amy's had the buns the whole time, the bun pigtail things. I don't even know what you call those.
Yeah.
Her hair.
It's kind of a mystery because people joke that they're like anti-gravity. They are. It definitely took from a little bit from Mickey Mouse, like just having a really identifiable silhouette is important for a main character, especially.
Yeah, and I've seen some people, trying to do the cosplay and everything. Just the different ways that a lot of the girls tried to do the hair is pretty funny.
Yeah, you got to be really creative to get your hair to stand up like that, especially because they seem to connect at a single point. Like there doesn't seem to be any volume going through They're just yeah, it's hard to describe for the audience. But you guys can go to Webtoons and look out. Check out Spaceboy to see what we're talking about.
Now, so what have been some of your favorite interactions since Spaceboy launched?
I just get cool stuff. My fans are really cool. They some of them can't draw, so they make fan art that's like really unique. Like someone sent in a picture. Well, they had drawn, I guess, with this, but they had drawn Oliver in latte foam, in a latte. It was really impressive. And another person had made a sculpture, and another person had made cosplay, and another person. I recently got like a picture of, I think it was like a sequined pillow that said Spaceboy, and it was really cool. Like, they make cool stuff, and they're really passionate. So I really appreciate them. I call them my Space Cadets because they're so cool.
And I love that you put one of those like at the end of like all of your episodes, like a little, oh hey, here's some awesome fan art, and you always talk about your like the fan art and say thank you and everything. I think that's a really cool thing to do.
Yeah, I've been a little trying to figure out what to do about it because I'll have that personal interaction, and then, but I can't keep up anymore. That they're sending in more fan art than I can post each week. So I feel bad because I literally have like 1,000 pieces of fan art that I haven't posted yet. That I need to find a home for it or something. I think I'll start an Instagram and start posting there, but. Yeah, they're really generous and awesome and patient with me too.
Definitely. And yeah, we kind of got to be patient because you've hooked us. So
Yeah.
we can't not be patient.
Yeah, it's a kind of a tough battle because you want to find out what happens next, but you don't want it to end. And Space
Exactly.
Boy does have a really specific ending that I'm aiming for, but it probably won't happen for another 2 or 3 years. We're just entering kind of the halfway point, and we're at episode almost 150. So it's a lot more to go, and but I'm really thankful that people are so impatient because it means that they're invested.
Well, I will say one thing. The fact that you said that there's another probably 2 to 3 more years, that is both exciting and terrifying. Because, especially for you too, just knowing that this is where I want it to go, and I have this much longer to get to it.
Yeah, there's a sense of like, I hope I don't die. Work as fast as you can. But I don't know. I really hope it takes off, especially the books. I hope the books do well. Because if it can if it could get into the book world and do well there, it could be a thing for a long time to come, which is exciting.
So for the book, so you said it comes out in July.
Yeah, it's going to come out from Dark Horse at July 3rd.
Excellent. So is it just like a kind of like an omnibus of episodes
1 through 16. It's going to be
1 through 16,
like
okay.
230 pages and it's full color. And I actually people are like, how are you going to convert the scrolling format to pages? But actually draw them in pages first and then convert that to the scrolling format. So it'll read pretty nicely as a graphic novel. And man, the pace that they have us work for Webtoons is something. Is again, I think it's a different thing for. I think Webtoons is another example of kind of the Eastern invasion of comics because the amount that a American cartoonist produces versus a Korean or a Chinese or a Japanese cartoonist has to produce is just so massively different. So anyway, all that to say, I currently have about I think let's see here, 2000. I think I have about 9 or 10 volumes of Space Boy that I've drawn in 3 years. I signed a contract with Dark Horse to post the first 4 volumes, and we're working on the design right now, and it looks super cool. And I think it'll be it'll be really neat for people to be able to buy it and like see the characters in full resolution and all of the little details that aren't readily apparent on the app. But yeah, I really hope that it takes off and I get to see all of that work turn into paper because there's something so nice about paper. Again, at the beginning of the show, I like raged about how terrible this technology was because none of it was real. But the weird thing is I haven't actually printed hardly any of the Space Boy comic that I've drawn. So Space Boy entirely exists in ones and zeros as of this moment. I'll draw it on my computer and I'll format it and I'll send it off. And it hasn't actually had a physical manifestation in the world yet. So there's a sense of like, I don't even think I know how much work I've actually done. Like if I had the 10 volumes here stacked before me, I'd be like, whoa, I've drawn a lot. But when you just upload something that you can swipe through, it feels like so much less, like it feels a lot more disposable.
Well, I for one definitely can't wait because I will be the first time that we see that pre-order. I'm going to start that pre-order because I definitely went in on that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the pre-order is up on Amazon right now, and I'm gonna.
Yeah. Oh,
dude, and it's crazy. Like Amazon, it's an $11 book, but they've marked it down to like $7.50 or something crazy, and it's a full color book. I'm really impressed.
$7.18 right now on Amazon. The title will be released on July 3rd. Pre-order with There we go.
Nice.
Done.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that it was already ready for pre-order.
Oh,
That's
it's
awesome.
ready. I'm going to be doing a pre-order contest, so keep hold of your confirmation number for that because there'll be like free downloads and anyone who like submits their confirmation order uh, can be get those downloads and be entered in to win like prize and merchandise from the store. And I'm going to make like an original Space Boy painting as the grand prize. Yeah, so
Sweet.
trying to get a lot of pre-orders as much as I can before the book comes out because that actually gives it a really big boost when it finally comes.
Yeah, let's make it to where like everybody listening, let's make it to where Dark Horse has to like do like 17 editions of
They're like,
Volume
uh-oh.
1. That's what we need.
Yeah.
Like, oh snap, we have 17,000 pre-orders. Yeah, that's what we need. Now, so you're getting the so we're getting the actual physical copy. What all do you want Space Boy to become? Like, are you hoping that somebody comes along and is like, "Hey, let's make a show"?
Yeah, I mean, I have an agent who is going to be. We decided it would be best to wait until there might be a couple graphic novels out, but he's gonna be pitching it in Hollywood, and
Nice.
we're hoping to make a show. At some, I don't know. I hope it becomes something, but that's again like the lottery. Even if a work gets optioned, that's still a lottery ticket within a lottery ticket because not, it's something like 5%, like 1% of all the work submitted is optioned and 1% of that is actually made into something. So it's a rare deal, but I really hope it spreads because I believe the story transcends the medium of comics. I think it would go really well in like a Netflix show or some ongoing show. I think the themes are important and relevant to where we are as a culture and what we're trying to process through right now, what we're trying to understand about ourselves and the world.
So, do you have any advice for any content creators out there right now, or someone who wants to start a webcomic, or someone who's just really starting to get into art, anything like that? Do you have any good advice?
Yeah, I wrote
or bad advice, just advice.
I wrote an entire book about the creative process called Brick by Brick, and it's on most of it's on my website doodlealley.com. So that's DOODLEALLEY.com. And Brick by Brick is a book about creative, sustainable creativity. Because there's this idea that essentially if you want to become good at something, it's just going to take a long time. It's going to take a really long time. And that's just the reality of it. But it's okay because there are ways to make that whole journey sustainable. Like essentially, I think a lot of us like artists, the temptation we have when we approach an artist is like, hey, how do you draw good? But the real question we should be asking is, how do you get yourself to draw for 10,000 hours, or 15,000 hours? Like, how do you get yourself to draw so long? If you could just figure out that question, then it almost doesn't even matter how you draw. If you were to draw for that long, you would be really good. And so that's what all of those. It's a book I wrote, but it's in comics form, so it's really accessible, and it's all about how to make that journey sustainable because it's really not about what you're doing. It's more about not giving up and if you're doing, if that makes sense. We have a feeling of like, oh, I drew something and it's bad, so I stopped. But we have to make a billion. We have to make a many bad things in order to make. There's a quote from the book that's gone kind of viral and turned into a life of its own. But the master has failed more times than the beginner has tried, and I really believe that's true.
Yeah, I mean, and I can say just going off of some personal experience, like I've been studying to be a voice actor, and I'll be with my coach, and I'll say something, and I'll just hate the way it sounds. But he'll come and he'll be like, no, that was actually really good. So just because you think that what you're doing, or you don't have enough confidence in yourself, doesn't mean that it's not good enough. Others, not something. It's wow. Again, I can't talk. So yeah, voice actor. Yeah, that's the good thing because you read. Just because you don't think that what you're doing is good enough doesn't mean that somebody else doesn't think.
Yeah, we're so quick to criticize, and we're our harshest critics. And I think the reason for that is because we have a sense, we know what is, we listen to voices all the time, we see the world all the time, so we have a really strong sense of when something doesn't sound right or when something doesn't look right, and so we pounce on that, and we forget that, like, when you're first starting something, you are essentially kind of like a baby learning how to walk, and we need to treat ourselves like we treat babies. Like if a baby were to walk and then fall over, you wouldn't be like, you suck, like you're the worst baby ever. You might be like, you suck.
I might. And then you kick dirt on it and be like, bad baby. Spray it with a bottle.
Oh my gosh, well. Yeah.
And that's why I have 0 kids.
No kids for you. But we need to be gentler with ourselves, and you need to be gentler with babies. So that's all I'm saying.
All right, Stephen, this is an awesome time. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Now, so where can all of our listeners find you?
Yeah, you guys should definitely, if you want to read Space Boy, it is a great binge read, and it will keep you nailed to your tablet or your phone or your web browser for a good 3 or 4 hours. So don't look at it if it's like midnight, because you will be awake till late in the morning. But it's a really good story, and I'm super proud of it. It's called Space Boy, and it's on WEBTOONs.com. You can follow me on Twitter at StephenMcCranie.com, and there'll probably be a link in the show notes.
Yep, we'll put the links to we'll put a link to your store in the show notes, a link to the comic in the show notes, and a link to your Twitter as well.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's about it.
All right, cool. And you can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at Josh L. Kane. You can find the podcast on Instagram at Animation Station Podcast, on Twitter at Animate Podcast, on Facebook and Tumblr at Animation Station Podcast. You can also find all of our episodes on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, and at our website, animationstationpodcast.com. Now, before we go, we do have one more thing. We're doing a special Space Boy giveaway. So for the giveaway, we're giving away two of Steven's Amy and Oliver posters from his store. To enter, all you have to do is follow the Animation Station on Instagram and comment on one of our Space Boy posts of what you like most about Space Boy. This contest will again, I can't read or talk. This contest will run through Sunday, March 4th at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. The 2 winners will be announced on our March 5th episode. So you have until Sunday at noon Pacific Time to comment what your favorite part about Space Boy is. And that way we can, you'll get entered for that. You'll get some ASP merch, and you'll get some awesome Space Boy merch as well. Okay, so Steven, that's all I got. You got anything else, man?
Not really. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate you sticking in there even with that cold that you're getting over.
Oh man, it's been killing me. But hey, definitely something that I'm never gonna turn down an interview because I'm sick. I'll crawl to the microphone, clutching it with my dying breath, and be like, "And we're done," and then sign off, and then I'll go out. Someone else will have to edit it, but I will have done the interview.
And that's how he died.
Exactly. Put that on his tombstone. Died with a mic in his hand.
It was
All right.
worth it.
It was definitely worth it. All right, again, Stephen, thanks so much for coming on.
All right, really appreciate it.
All right, so for the Animation Station, I'm Josh.
And I'm Steven.
Perfect. Bye, everybody.